Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Gene Marks and welcome to Ahead in the Cloud. We are a podcast for small business owners and managers that want to stay current on technology. Now listen, this podcast is brought to you by the AWS Connected Community. It's a free online community that's built by AWS, but it's powered by its members, where you can get free expert advice, training, and peer-to-peer interaction to help you with all your technology questions. So you can find the AWS Connected Community at aws-experience.com. My guest today is John Hammond. John is a cybersecurity researcher at Huntress Labs. First of all, John, thank you so much for joining.
Hey, thanks so much, Gene. Great to be here with you.
Glad that you were here. It makes me laugh. So your title is cybersecurity research. Do you ever think the word cybersecurity? It sounds so old, and yet it's used everywhere. But I remember cyber was I'm thinking of like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Terminator, 30 years ago.
Oh yeah.
But it's still very relevant now, obviously. So first of all, John, let's find out a little bit about you and also about Huntress as well. What does it mean to be a cybersecurity researcher? How did you get to this point?
Oh, thank you. My goodness. Well, thanks for the warm welcome, and I hope I don't ramble too long about either me or my background and all. But
ramble away.
So, hey, hi, hello. My name is John Hammond. I am a security researcher at Huntress for my day job. Along the side, I also have a silly, cheesy YouTube channel where I showcase a whole lot of cybersecurity education, training, capture the flag, programming tutorials, all the nerd, geeky hacker stuff. But it's been a lot of fun. It's love what I'm doing for work these days. It's extremely fulfilling. And as a security researcher, I'm so fortunate. And they sort of just say, hey, go do whatever's fun and interesting and looks really worthwhile. Over at Huntress, we're supporting and protecting a lot of the managed service providers and small mid-market businesses, just trying to bolster cybersecurity and help them all in this big fight here.
Right.
But there's a lot to do.
Yeah, it's definitely job security. There's no doubt about that. I mean, security itself, it's been an issue in the technology community since I've been in the technology community, and that's going on 30 years. And I don't think it's ever going to go away. I mean,
No,
we
I
all,
don't think
as business
so.
owners and individuals, we all have to expect that cybersecurity issues are always going to be a part of our lives.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. I mean, what about the company that you work for, about Huntress Labs? What do they do?
For sure. So we consider ourselves a managed security platform.
Okay.
There's a product, there's an agent, right, that runs on the endpoint to look for, at least at the start, persistent implants, footholds, beacons, how a hacker might maintain access. Because you wouldn't be that sweet, sophisticated of a hacker if you send a phishing email and got access, but then had to send it again and again and again. That would just be stupid. So they maintain access, they have their own persistence, but we're also trying to trigger and look for ransomware, evidence of that, open attack surface with ports, and managing antivirus, super tuning up Windows Defender. And we've moved into a couple new directions to get security training in the mix, like user education and awareness, and now helping to bolster up and manage Microsoft 365. So a whole lot of bells and whistles, but doing our best to protect the 99% is what we say. Hey, raising the security poverty line.
Sure. And who are you, without naming names, give me a demographic or a description of your clients. Like, why do they hire you guys, and what do you do for them?
Yeah, we consider ourselves channel first. So,
Okay.
the folks in the managed service provider space that are protecting those small mid-market businesses sort of downstream. Now that, truthfully, could be anything. Hey, you've got a dental office, you've got a law firm, you've got some healthcare spots, hospitals, you've got schools, maybe municipalities, police departments, anything, really. Any mom and pop shop, ultimately, that, I don't know, might have 100 employees, that might have maybe thousands of endpoints or tens, hundreds of thousands of endpoints.
Makes sense. It makes sense. All right, John. So our audience, like I told you before we started recording, are small and mid-sized business owners. A lot of us are running our businesses. We are busy running our businesses, and doing our thing. And we don't know anything about, IT security and all the threats that are out there. And I guess I'm going to start this conversation, with what should we know, John? I mean, if you're talking to a group of us as business owners, and this is what you do for your job, what should we know about the issues, the concerns, the opportunities that are out there when it comes to security?
Yeah. Oh, it's a super good question because I'm totally understanding and cognizant. Like, hey, business owners, you got to run a business, you got to keep operations running, and a lot of that maybe nerdy, geeky computer stuff isn't always on the front of your perspective.
Right.
So if it boils down to the simple stuff, yes, acknowledge there are threats out there, and we can kind of press the I believe button. We're all aware of that. If you want to get into the nitty gritty, I think we're seeing a new trend where I know threat actors might be a sensitive word here, but they're wanting to target the identity. Not
Mm,
so much, oh, the device, the computer anymore, because we've done that and it's sort of boring. We know, oh, phishing emails, yada, yada, yada. Don't plug in USB drives, two-factor, blah, blah, blah.
right.
Now it's trying to get to you as a person, or
Right.
maybe enough so that, okay, you could be a high value individual or identity that has a whole lot of access and credentials to the environment, to the infrastructure, to the cloud, as we might say. Those are the sensitive things that are trying to, I think, lean a little bit more now to not just compromise, oh, a computer, but how much of your whole life could we maybe access?
Right. And a lot of our life, and we can dig into this a little bit because there are some things that I think, both myself and our audience needs to know about. Our lives do revolve around passwords, for
Yeah,
example. I just wrote a piece recently for Forbes about, the rise in passwordless security.
yeah.
And a lot of times people don't really understand that. And I was wondering if you could maybe explain that, what that is, and why you think that's a good or a bad thing.
Ooh, okay. I'll do my best because I know
Okay.
passwordless can be a little bit vague and some folks have
Can
maybe
be.
different understandings and definitions, but I really parallel it to not so much single sign-on where you can carry your identity from one application or website to another. But even just like, hey, can we use a specific pass key or use our device as an authentication token or some hardware, whatever.
Right.
And those vary, right? And whatever their implementation, but it's getting away from this silly, stupid, long thing that you have to type and memorize over and over and over again. Um, that's a good thing. That is inherently a good thing because we know that's a weakness having one single phrase that might open the door for anything. And we've tried that. We've tried to make it better with password managers. We're of course doing two-factor authentication. We're putting all these security mechanisms in place, but it still boils down to that bottleneck flaw of a password.
Yeah.
So whatever we
Yeah.
can do to move away from that, I think is a worthwhile thing. And we see a lot of different attempts to do so.
So, password managers themselves, there are a few that are out there. The intention of the password manager is that we, both individuals and, our employees can store our passwords there on this separate place, which is encrypted a million times over. And whenever that way we can store complex passwords instead of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they can
Right.
be with symbols and characters and letters and all that kind of stuff. And then we can receive them from our password manager to get into different sites. But like you just said, it's a bottleneck, right? I mean, we still need that password to get into the site. And then on top of that, I mean, there have been news reports about some of the password managers being being sort of hacked, which is not good.
Mm.
If it's
A
keeping all
single
of our
point of failure. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's a single point of failure. So I don't know if that seems like a long term solution or not. And then there's the multi factor authentication part. So let me ask you about that as well. Now, for
Yeah.
those of you guys listening or watching, multi-factor authentication is, I mean, we should be familiar with it now. Most common, you go to your bank's website, you try to you log in, and then it will send you a text message to your phone, and you put in the code from that text message back into the site, and then that gives you access into the site. John, do you see multi-factor authentication as being 100% secure? Do you see it having a long future? I mean, what are your thoughts on multi-factor authentication?
Ooh, okay. I think there are a lot of different maybe rabbit holes to go down there.
Sure.
If I may sprinkle in one last thing on the
Please.
password tidbit, I think even as we're adding multi-factor authentication as one way to keep augmenting and bolstering the security, yeah, we've all discussed password managers and all the things that could come with it. And you mentioned a long-term strategy or a long-term solution. I don't know. It's really hard to kind of change and overhaul everything that we've built in tech and security for decades. And I parallel it a little bit to I don't know, us in the real world walking around trying to pay for things at a coffee shop. Like, hey, most folks want to take a card, a credit card, or some Apple Pay, cheesy Google, whatever.
True.
But folks still take cash and they pay with cash. The cash isn't going to go away. Are we ever going to get passwords to go away, or do we parallel that with just cashed paper dollar bills in some way?
So passwords, we're having a conversation about that. And before I lead you go, I think the takeaway from what you were saying is that passwords themselves are they're not going to go away anytime soon. Just like cash is not going to go away anytime soon. So therefore, we have to expect as business people that when we have network security, when we're whoever our cloud providers are, we have to understand that passwords could be part of the security that we're doing, at least for the foreseeable future. Is that a fair statement to make?
I'd agree with that. Absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk about multi-factor authentication because sometimes I read and I love listening to all the conspiracy podcasts that are out there about these kinds of things. And sometimes people like they get to you. They have concerns about whether or not multi-factor authentication is completely secure. So I just, and again, guys, for those of you guys that are listening, or watching, that we're talking about, when you get a text message, with a code, and then it gives you access into a site. Do you feel very confident that multi-factor authentication is a good way to secure your data? What are your thoughts on it?
Yes. I'll do the short answer, yes, but obviously whatever legalese, hey, we had an asterisk and a footnote and disclaimer. There are a lot of, again, rabbit holes to go down there, but I feel like it really relies on implementation and understanding that trust and structure because, hey, there are different forms of multi-factor authentication. And oftentimes you'll see, SMS, just a text message. Sometimes you see through your app, an authenticator app, whether Microsoft has one or Duo or a couple others, right? Truthfully, from the security nerd perspective, SMS does have a couple question marks and there might be some weaknesses there, whether you go down into SMS, like SIM swapping, all that noise, or any other spoofed messages that could come from a potential other individual, not actually the service you think you're authenticating to, blah, blah, blah. The app, the authenticator app is preferred. But I realize, hey, maybe some folks just might not be all that in the know and they just roll with the text message. Hey, for use cases, it should be A-okay. But when we can use the app, that's preferred. I'm sorry, I'm going down this road, but I do think a lot of folks chat about how there are really 3 pedestals to authentication.
Okay.
It should rely on something that's usually been our password, something you have, that's usually been our cell phone authenticator app text message with multi-factor, or something you are, and that's our biometrics, like your eye retina scan or pressing your fingerprints. Those 3 can basically offer trust. But that's why we call it multi-factor authentication, not just 2-factor authentication when we can. Multi is preferred for 3 and however many ways we can iterate on that. I'm sorry, am I going way too far off the mark here, Gene, or what do you think?
That is fantastic. And, and I actually, I want to dig into that a little bit further as well, because I think it's really important for us to know, because this is what we can all expect from authentication, from security going forward. Yeah, there is, still a role for passwords. There is still a role for authentication. And again, like you said, can be a text message, can be using like an app that gives you an authentication number that you have to type into the application. Some places use hardware for authentication, correct? Like a key, right? Like a USB key that you put into your device so that, it knows that it's you, right? So that's another form of authentication. And then you mentioned like the third part, which is, I guess who you are, which is biometrics. And I do hear a lot about biometrics. So can you expand on that, John? Like where, we talked about passwords. We talked about, next level authentication, text messaging apps or keys to get access. But now there could even be a third level. Say, okay, I believe you, but not yet. I do want to confirm that it is definitely you, and I want to do that through biometrics. Talk to me a little bit about what's out there now for biometrics, when it comes to security and what you expect to see in the future.
Totally. So I'll be, hey, fully transparent. And if it's all right, we'll talk a little bit about me and sort of how I live in
Bring
whatever
it on.
paranoia security world, right?
Yes.
So I use a password manager. First and foremost, I understand the reality. And I really think, hey, having something that can automatically generate crazy long, complex, secure passwords that I don't know. I don't know any of my passwords. If you held me hostage and held me down, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Right.
But right, multi-factor authentication. I do use, and I've got it right here with me in my pocket for any of the video watchers here. Sorry, audio listeners, but I use one of those hardware YubiKeys that
Yep.
I plug into whatever cell phone with the USB-C port or my desktop computer. And right on here, it's got a little scanner and identifier for my fingerprint. So when I plug this thing in, it'll go ahead and ask, hey, please supply your own, again, something you are as an element of our authentication to allow this authentication.
So let me interrupt you for that. So that's fascinating to me too, because I haven't used a YubiKey yet. I have an authenticator app that I use, which generates, that number that I use, that code that to get me into places that I've set up with this authenticator app. But I haven't used the YubiKey yet. I thought the YubiKey was just like, well, you carry it around, you connect it to your keychain, you plug it into the USB port, or to the USB-C port that you have on your device. And then that basically tells it, yeah, it's me. But I guess what you're saying is that we need even, to go a little bit beyond that, because somebody can steal that key from me, right? And plug it into a computer. So, now your key, you not only are using the key, which says it's part of this device, but now it's asking for the extra level of using your fingerprint, correct?
Totally.
Okay. I mean, that's a lot of layers to go through, but this is the world that we're living in now, right?
Yeah. So there's always that balance that folks chat about between, hey, cybersecurity is the juggling act of privacy and convenience and security, ultimately.
Sure.
We talk a lot about what we call defense in depth, and that is that layered security. And I'm super glad you mentioned it there, Gene. Like, hey, man, this is a whole lot of hoops to jump through. Like, we got a lot of different layers of the onion here.
The military puts in so many levels of security and safety into so many things that they do. And you're using your submarine ships, even weapons that, that people use or whatever, that before you can actually, anything really bad can happen. A lot of bad things have to happen, before it turns into a disaster, And I guess we have to look at our own security of our own data in the same way. Like, guys, we live in a world right now where it's not just a password anymore. There has to be, multiple levels of control here before anybody can get access to our data. And that's what the military does. Like in submarines, that's what would be expected of any business as well. Is that that's the point that you're making, right?
Yes, and if I may, I'd love
Please.
to dance with that a little bit, because I know, and I know, like, hey, it still sounds like so much stuff, and there's a lot to it, and like, I don't have time. Is the normal knee-jerk reaction, because you got to be running the business and keeping operations going.
Sure.
And maybe it doesn't have to be you. Maybe, hey, we'll delegate, we'll do what we do, have some hired management provider be able to take care of that for us. But getting this information out there, getting the education and the awareness is just about the strongest thing that we can do. That's the best defense, is making sure folks are aware of all of this. And then when they can, or however we can have to work as a team, let's do that scrutiny. Let's take a look at these access controls. Let's make sure we have principal least privilege, need to know, yada, yada, yada. But I know that takes time, and I know that takes a little bit of commitment and all that responsibility, but it has to be done. And that's the best way we can kind of keep marching onward in security. I'm
gonna come back to that, because it's a critical point that you're making. But before I do, let me wrap up. I have so many questions for you. But when it comes to biometrics, you mentioned fingerprints. Okay, so if you guys are listening to this, you can't see this, but on video, like, I bite my nails. Sometimes I bite my fingers. I'm sorry. I've done that my entire life. I don't even know if I have fingerprints at this point. I think I do. But but I guess my point is that is fingerprints the be all and end all for biometrics? Do you see the future of the Tom Cruise movie with the eye scans, facial recognition? Where do you think biometrics is heading? So again, as business owners, we can know what to expect.
Yeah. I'll admit that's a tough one because I think you've seen it, as you mentioned, in these Hollywood movies or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe someone breaking into a bank and they, I don't know, did some paste glue thing to grab someone's fingerprint that they can
Yeah.
use to get into the vault.
Right.
But you've got those eye scanners and iris scanners, and those are whatever crazy advanced, or maybe Windows Hello or the facial recognition as you log in to like take a picture of you and scan that. Maybe those can be spoofed. We've, I don't know, got the whole deep fake thing.
We do.
I I can't speculate. I'll admit, can't see the future. Don't have a crystal ball here, but I think moving in that direction is better than not at all. So